Could we come to order, please? Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We're here really pursuant to Standing Order 1064 for a meeting requested by 4 members of the committee to discuss the request to undertake a study on Canada Pension Plan Agreement, or at least that's how I read it. There was a letter directed on September 4th to the clerk of the committee from Ms. Raitt, Mr. McColman, Mr. Leipert, and Mr. Caron. And so I guess we would turn to one of those 4, or those that are here. Mr. McColman.
Well, thank you, Chair. And first of all, it's good to see everybody is in good health coming back to the committee on this wonderful summer day. As Her Majesty's Royal Opposition, we're extremely concerned with the lack of information, the lack of analysis, the lack of consultation that has not happened, as far as we know. We haven't been told of it, if it has happened, regarding the changes to the CPP. It was announced that an agreement in principle came into existence between the Finance Minister and his provincial colleagues, and that's about all we've heard. And we've heard that there was an urgency to get something done. Now, we don't know if it's legislation that we're going to see in the fall. We don't know if it's a government and council outside of Parliament order that will do this. There's just a lack of knowledge around this, and it's a huge concern. We've done roundtables through the summer, economic roundtables, in particular with businesses who are extremely tentative and extremely nervous with the effects that these increases could have to their business, in particular, frankly, small business. And from our read, there's been no meaningful consultation that we're aware of with organizations like the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, who represents tens of thousands of businesses in this country. There's been no consultation, as far as we know, at least they tell us there hasn't been, with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, who represents all variety of business in this country. And as far as we know, at this point, not having been party to any information, we don't know if there's been any meaningful consultation with the public generally and workers, and how this will affect their pay when this comes into, if these changes do come into effect. So we realize that that the government made this commitment during the election campaign. We acknowledge that, but we think this is the venue, the public venue, where we let Canadians know what and how this is going to affect not only themselves personally, but the economy in general, the fiscal policy of the government, and how it all intertwines in our system of economics across this country. And this is what we heard when we were on our roundtables across the country, frankly, the finance critic and myself engaging with people. So I would lead off, Chair, with a motion, and I'll read the motion. That the Standing Committee on Finance invite the Honourable Bill Marneau to appear before the committee to answer questions about the government's June 20th, 2016 agreement with the provinces to expand the Canada Pension Plan. I have copies of the motion. I can pass them out if I can give them to the clerk. I'll just keep. Oh no, you can go. You can go.
Got one?
Yeah, I got one.
So you're going to speak to that motion then now?
I'll speak to that motion now. As I'm not sure all committee members are aware, but in a lead up to this meeting, we wrote to the Finance Minister 15 days ago. We wrote a letter to the Finance Minister. It was a letter directed to him, specifically informing him that we were concerned about this issue and having a lack of information and having the concerns I just brought up previously, and that we asked him to consider coming to this meeting, not specifically on this date, but a date that was convenient to him. And so we basically gave him 15 days from today, previously, notice that we were intending to call this meeting, as the 4 members have, and we were asking him to indicate dates that may suit him, and we had no response. Now, I'll also say, then, having no response from the minister, we determined that this was such an important issue that we initiated the process in doing the 2064 or
1064.
20164. So that's how it came about, and so we are saying in this motion that we would like the minister here. We think he's the appropriate person to speak to this issue because he's the lead on it, and we would like to have him here at the committee. We would have liked to have him today, frankly, or a day at his indication, but we didn't get that.
Okay, I have on my list Ms. Raitt and then Mr. Silvera. Ms. Raitt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I echo the concern that my colleague well expressed. Mr. Chair, we rose on June 17 of this year, and it was on June 20th that the minister made the announcement of changes to the Canada Pension Plan. I am concerned, and I'd like to get some answers from the minister on some specific issues. One of them being, how does that process actually dovetail with the formal legal process that comes under the Canada Pension Plan legislation? Has government officials been instructed to just not abide by what legislation says? And I've prepared to ask officials questions today, and I was hoping that they would be there because I don't know if the minister actually knows the answers because they are technical questions. But I would appreciate it if the officials had actually showed up because they had known that we've had these questions for a long time. I mean, Mr. Chair, there's supposed to be a review every 3 years, and indeed in the annual report, which was signed by the Minister of Finance, it is noted that there is a triennial review, and it's on the basis of this triennial review that changes are made to CPP. Now, this may seem to be a little bit technical and in the weeds, but I think it's really pertinent to the issue at hand, which is why the rush? The only testimony that we have on the record so far on the CPP comes from Jack Mintz, who appeared on Thursday, June 16, before the Standing Senate Committee on National Finance, and he gave evidence. And he was asked, because it was fresh, whether or not what he thought about the CPP expansion, and his initial advice and evidence led with this following quote. The question is, what's the problem? Mr. Mintz went on to talk about the fact that he has studied this in the past, McKinsey has studied it, and the truth is that 83% of Canadians are actually doing fine, and that they're in a financially sustainable program of support for retirement. So one of the questions I'd like to ask officials, and what I'd like to ask of the minister when he appears, is whether or not they took into consideration that while there may be gaps, and I recognize there are gaps in CPP that need to be addressed, why did they not go down the road of figuring out how to help those in pain, like single senior women who end up losing a significant amount of money, $10,000, when their partner passes away? Because to me, that seems something that we should fix and that we could fix, which is not fixed by what the minister is proposing to do. The other aspect that I would like to understand, Mr. Chair, and my colleague has mentioned it, is exactly what process are we going to be into in terms of whether we have until October 1st, as noted in the actual legislation, if there's going to be a governor and council regulation passed before October 1st so that this can be implemented. I'd like to know the answer to that as well, and we're running out of time. That's why we gave 2 weeks' notice for the minister. I was asked a question by a reporter outside, Mr. Chair. They said, well, the minister has indicated that he didn't know about the meeting today. I would suspect that you informed the minister's office that there is a request for the Minister of Finance to appear today. His office is saying that when they get the official paper, they will make sure that they make him available. We could have missed that step in the middle. We could have had him here today, and that's why we're moving the motion to bring him in as soon as possible. I would close, Mr. Chair, with this. The other aspect of testimony that Jack Mintz gave on that day in June was around the question of, well, why now and why the rush? And I think that's an important question for Canadians. What is the motivation? What he surmises is that he believes that what is happening now is there's a movement afoot to try to kill off the Ontario Retirement Pension Plan, otherwise known in Ontario as the ORPP, for a lot of reasons. He says it is a terrible idea. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen in public policy in years, and there's now an attempt to try to get a CPP expansion to try to kill off the ORPP. Well, Mr. Chair, Ontario, although my home province, it's only 38% of the country. There's another 62% that should not have to be having a CPP change that has not been described to the public. The cost-benefit analysis has not been given to parliamentarians. The timeframes and the understanding of who benefits is cloudy at best. And we've got 2 polling institutions indicating that there's a lack of understanding and much confusion about what the benefits are and what the costs are. And indeed, one of the most telling polls recently indicated that a full 25% of Canadians think it's the government putting more money into the pension, which we all know is not the case. So for the reasons of clarity, of having different stakeholders come in and talk about the effect that this would have on the economy today, and understanding from the actuary as to what the plan is to shoehorn this separate ad hoc process into legislation that must be abided by would be interesting for me as well. And finally, for the minister to tell us what his true motivation is for these changes. That's why I support the motion as put forth by my colleague.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Mr. Sabara.
Good afternoon, everyone. And echoing Phil's comments, great to see everybody here again. I'd like to offer up what I would call a friendly amendment to the motion that Mr. McColman, I believe Mr. McColman's brought forward, that the Minister of Finance, if I can read it out, that the Minister of Finance and officials from the Department of Finance be invited to testify before the Finance Committee on September 19th, 2016 from 12 to 1, and that the subcommittee schedule a further meeting to hear from stakeholders.
Okay, do you want to read that again? I know it's an amendment, so it probably isn't typed out, so everybody is clear of it. Is clear what it says.
That the Minister of Finance and officials from the Department of Finance be invited to testify before the Finance Committee on September 19th, 2016 from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. and that the subcommittee schedule a further meeting to hear from stakeholders.
Okay, do you want to, it's been, the amendment has been moved. It's in order as I see it.
Yes.
So, debate on the amendment. Yes, sorry, Mr. Duval, I had you on my list.
Thank you. And I appreciate everybody being here today and taking their valuable time away, but we certainly support the motion and talking the main motion, and I'll talk about the amendment in a minute, but on the main motion, I think it's very, very crucial that we have up-to-date information of what was agreed to with the provinces. We certainly are very, very happy that this is a positive step forward on the CPP expansion, but there's a lot of unknowns out there and people are very concerned. And I think the openness and transparency is very, very important. So I understand what the amendment was just saying, but I like to question, my concern would be, is 12 to 1 sufficient time? I think there's a lot of questions and to know of what actually happened, and I don't think getting 1 hour is actually going to find that adequate. So I'll leave that question through you, Mr. Chair. Maybe they can answer.
Okay, Mr. Sabara, do you want to answer that, and then we'll turn to Mr. McKinnon. or do you have an answer?
No,
Go ahead.
on the allocation of time, I think the 12 to 1 for the Minister of Finance and with associated department officials is plenty. I think the subcommittee can sit down and review the stakeholders and to allocate more time for stakeholders.
So just so I'm clear, so we would have the minister and officials for an hour on September 19th. The subcommittee, that'll
Mr.
give
Chair?
us an outline where the government is at, and the subcommittee would meet to see when we could time, if other witnesses were required, and when we could time them in. Because I think people have to understand as well, we are in pre-budget consultations, and we are pretty busy from September 20th till October 31st. So the suggestion in the amendment is the subcommittee would meet, determine what other witnesses we invite in as well. Okay.
And we could for the second hour have the department officials remain to answer further questions.
Okay. Mr. McKinnon, and then Mr. McCollum, and then you, Mr. Duval.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As my colleagues have said, I'm also pleased to see you all back. Welcome, Mr. Duval, to the Finance Committee. I believe that we need to set the context before voting, and I think we have a consensus around the table. Again, the context.
Very proud of what has been accomplished in seemingly record time by our Minister of Finance and his provincial counterparts. 9 provinces out of 10 signing on to major expansion in retirement benefits is an important and meaningful step for Canadians, and one that I think has been done prudently, one that, as all of you know, despite claims of lack of information, it will be phased in over a 7-year period, beginning in approximately 3 years, and will represent a meaningful change in the quality of life of Canadian retirees for as far as the eye can see. So I know we'll be very, very proud to hear the details of this arrangement from the Finance Minister on the 19th of September. The other important thing, I think, because I know all of us take very seriously our responsibilities as parliamentarians, cet automne, nous allons non seulement...
This fall, we are not only going to hear from the Minister of Finance, his officials and experts, I imagine Canada's Chief Actuary as well, I imagine the Parliamentary Budget Officer as well. It's also possible we will hear from other experts. We've already called the Canada Pension Fund Management Board. So we are going to conduct a very in-depth review of this agreement. And again, to address the questions my colleague Ms. Raitt was raising, yes, indeed, there will be a bill, an implementation bill of this agreement, and this committee is going to study that bill. So Canada's Parliament will have its say. There will be a fulsome debate on the changes which the Minister of Finance proposed on September 19th. So we are embarking on this project with a great deal of confidence and satisfaction. This fulfills a campaign promise we made, and we will be able to tell Canadians that we are respecting our commitments and that we are delivering positive change to the middle class and all Canadians.
Abdul Tuf.
Thank you very much, actually, and welcome everyone back to the game here. The point is 1 hour is not enough, I mean, as proposed by the motion, to question and the minister and the officials together. I think this will be nothing but a complete waste of time, and definitely need more time to be able to discuss the details, since there was no details being released at all. Just being the big talks about how Canadians are going to feel better moving forward, especially the retiree and the people that they need the money most, knowing that behind the scene that this is not something that anyone is going to be benefiting from at any time soon. This is a very, very long-term thing, And God knows when years down the road, who's going to come back and say to Canadians, we're sorry, we taxed you all the way on this, and right now we don't know how much you're going to be benefiting from. So it's a very dangerous route we're going. This is not, some Canadians, a lot of people see it as just another tax hike, and that's something that we have to be careful. We're all responsible here to be able to move forward on any policies that is going to affect the pocket of Canadians in the hardship that we're going through right now and the economic downturns that we have been facing. So I do believe that, 1 hour is not enough. Actually, even 2 hours, we're talking, is too short of a time. So I would like to see that we have more time in questioning and asking and getting the Minister of Finance and his officials into this place.
Mr. Duval, and then Ms. Raitt.
Yes, like I said before, our position is we think this is a very good step, but more work needs to be done. But as I don't want to keep repeating myself, but 1 hour, or maybe we could have some extra time with the officials after that, with the minister being there, understanding his timing. My other question would be, what can we define what stakeholders mean? What is the definition of a stakeholder?
Okay, Mr. McColman.
I shared that concern about a definition of stakeholder, and in this particular amendment, I'm not so sure that the whole committee shouldn't deal with who those stakeholders are and discuss them and put them on the table, all of us, instead of a subcommittee dealing with it. And so I have some concerns regarding the subcommittee dealing with it. Why not the complete committee? I would ask that question of the mover of the amendment. Secondly, Chair, you bring up a really good point, and that is the fact that if you look at this committee's workload coming back with pre-budget consultations and the things that we've already planned, I fear that the fact that we're here today as a result of 2 weeks ago offering the minister time to be here, asking him to work it into his schedule and tell us the date, and no meaningful reply from the minister on doing that. And so hence we're here today. And he should be here today, frankly, in my opinion, or a day at his choosing. It should have happened before this. So that said, I'm not sure the 19th, when I look at our schedule and the workload that we have, is a great choice. Yes, it's fitting him in. It's talking about this issue probably and frankly superficially, because we're going to have to, if we bring the stakeholders in that we want on this side, we're going to have to put a full agenda together of meetings after meeting after meeting to get the consultation with people, the stakeholders, that hasn't happened to date, obviously, because we're debating an amendment to bring in stakeholders. So all of those things rolled up, this committee may want to get at this with the minister next week. I don't think it's, I think it's probably knowledge of all committee members that the chair worked on trying to get the minister here and suggested the 15th. So if you look at that as a possibility, perhaps, the reality is maybe we should be fitting this in sooner rather than later.
Okay, I think I had Mr. Sabara first, then Ms. O'Connell, and then Mr. Graywell. Do you want it? Go ahead.
Just to address what Mr. Duval had commented earlier on, I had mentioned prior to that on the meeting, the proposed meeting for the 19th, that the second hour, with unanimous consent, that we could have the departmental officials remain for further questioning. So that's on the table. The motion is quite clear in terms of having the finance Minister appear on the first day we're back for the sitting of Parliament. We'd like to stick to that time frame. That works for the Minister and works for everyone on our side. And I'd just like to echo some of Mr. McKinnon, my colleague's comments on the CPP. Obviously, we live in a day and age that a lot of companies aren't providing or have wound up their private pension plans, be it defined benefit or defined contribution. So the CPP is playing an even more important role in retirement futures for Canadians. This is a campaign commitment of ours. It's a campaign commitment we've fulfilled and that we will fulfill legislatively in the fall. So it's important for us to make sure that all Canadians understand that. And one of the important steps is having the Finance Minister appear here before the committee. And with the motion that we proposed today, that will happen on the 19th of September. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm confused by some of the comments that with Mr. McColman just now. It's an urgent matter that must be dealt with once the minister here as soon as possible. We provide the first day back, and now all of a sudden the committee is too busy with pre-budget consultations coming up. And Mr. McColman acknowledged that the September 15th was an option. So which is it? Is this really important, or is this really about bringing the committee here and saying how they feel without actually hearing the details from the minister? Because the minister, as the motion we've put forward, would come here with officials, and then the subcommittee would determine the meeting availability for stakeholders, which has been the process so far for any topic that has been, whether it's pre-budget or even when we looked at matters such as CRA. That has been the process of this committee as well as the subcommittee, and we're providing the date. In fact, the original motion from Mr. McColman didn't even specify a date, just said as soon as possible, and we're providing literally the first possible date that we're back. So I would hope that this amendment is passed unanimously. And as far as the definition of stakeholder, I mean, we've acknowledged that in the sense that that's been the process throughout, and the subcommittee can find the appropriate date and find the process for all three parties at the table to provide witnesses if that's the case. But this is nothing new to this committee, and I hope we don't lose fact of that we're providing the first possible date, a date that the original motion didn't even speak to. So we're happy to be here. We're happy to have the minister and officials appear, because I think this is something that Canadians will be happy to hear about, all the work that the minister and his officials have been doing. So I hope this amendment is passed unanimously so that we can deal with exactly that and talk about the CPP enhancements and all the work the minister has done on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Greywell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to echo the sentiments of my colleague. I'm, speaking here for not on behalf of the Minister of Finance, but the fact of the matter is that, like Mr. McColman said, there was conversations in the background before this meeting was even scheduled about getting the minister here. And then you present a motion when we get here today not specifying a date on when he's supposed to arrive. There was 2 dates proposed in conversation, September 15th and now today, September 19th, that the minister is prepared to come to speak to CPP enhancements at the first possible opportunity. So I just don't understand why we need to go through the procedural wranglings and the political grandstanding when the minister was already ready to appear before this committee. And then we come here, all of us today, all across the country, some from vacation and that stuff, and we come here today only to get a motion put in front of us by the loyal opposition without a date specifying when he should come. And now the amendment's been proposed that he's going to show up on the first day at a special committee on finance because he understands the importance of CPP. And we all understand the importance of CPP here across the country, and it's important to have the Minister of Finance here and officials to give us an update and before the legislation comes to the House in October. So I really hope and I encourage members of this committee to support this amendment, get it passed, and let's go back to working for Canadians because they sent us here to do a job.
Thank you, Mr. Graywell. Could I ask the clerk to read the amendment in the proper form before we go to Mr. McColman and then Ms. Raitt? Susie?
That the Standing Committee on Finance invite the Honourable Bill Morneau and department officials to appear before the committee on September 19, 2016 from 12 to 1 p.m., with officials staying for a second hour from 1 to 2 p.m., to answer questions about the government's June 20, 2016 agreement with the provinces to expand the Canada Pension Plan, and that the subcommittee schedule a further meeting to hear from stakeholders.
I question, you would say subcommittee to hear from stakeholders to, I think it really is for the subcommittee to schedule further meetings with stakeholders. Yeah. Okay, we okay on that? Mr. McColman.
Let's be clear. I appreciate the motion, and frankly, I'll be supporting it. Okay? But let's be clear. This is an extremely important issue. So that's why we're here. Because we were not getting from the minister any feedback as to whether he would appear or when he would appear. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. We sent him a letter inviting him to choose the date, and we did not hear back. So let's be clear why we're here.
Thank you very much. And yes, we will be. I will be supporting the motion as amended. I appreciate. I didn't hear the officials in the first resolution, and that's why I wasn't in favor of it. However, I want to also thank my colleague, Mr. McKinnon, for giving us clarity on a very important question, which has to do with the legislative path that this will be taking. And we wouldn't have gotten that information, quite frankly, Mr. Chair, if we weren't here today. And I think it is important piece in order for us to understand where and when Canadians are going to have the ability to insert their comments that they gave to us as the opposition this summer on the topic of CPP. So with that, I'm going to support the amendment as proposed. And I thank Mr. McKinnon for being transparent on the manner in which we're going to be proceeding on these changes. And we look forward to a fulsome discussion.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. On the motion as amended, any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Then that is the result of this meeting. Before I adjourn, we do have a couple of issues on pre-budget consultations that I would like to raise so that the clerk and others can get into inviting the witnesses and how we operate on pre-budget. Phil?
Again, I expressed my reservations about the subcommittee.
Before you speak, pre-budget consultations, or is it another issue?
No, this is about going. We're not finished this meeting because I've got more motions to present to this committee, because we would like on this side to be very clear about who it is we would like to have as stakeholders. And I've expressed my reservations in my comments back about the fact that the subcommittee will decide on these things. I think we want to button it down as the opposition in terms of who we invite. So I'm going to make this.
Phil, if I could, the motion already has in it that the subcommittee will meet, and I think we all understand in this committee whatever the subcommittee decides, and I don't think the subcommittee has ever been restrictive. Whatever the subcommittee decides has to be voted on by the committee as a whole in any event. So there will be an opportunity to add further names if the subcommittee, in your wisdom, doesn't include enough.
With all due respect, Chair, we know that this is a majority Liberal government that we have, and they hold the balance of power on subcommittee, and they hold the balance of power around this table. And so in the world of trying to be doing our due diligence as the loyal opposition, I am going to present these motions, Mr. Chair. And the first one will be that the Standing Committee on Finance invite the Canadian Federation of Independent Business to provide testimony on how the government's June 20th, 2016 agreement with the provinces to expand the Canada Pension Plan will impact jobs, economic growth, and business investment. Mr. Chair, I will give the copies of this at the table now.
Point of order. Who's on the point of order?
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, the previous motion that was just approved set out the parameters, which is that the stakeholders would be determined at the subcommittee. So any of these motions would be out of order because that was just approved previously that set these parameters, in which Mr. McColman voted in support as well. So it's up to you, of course, but it's my understanding that that would be out of order because it's contradictory to the motion we just approved.
Yeah, we've got a bit of a complication, but in the letter that was sent to the clerk, I'm told by the clerk that the B section of that letter says invite key stakeholders to share their views. I don't disagree with you, Ms. O'Connell, that it's a subcommittee job to do that, and I prefer to go that way, but Mr. McColman's motion is in order due to the second section of the 106.4 letter. And that motion is, again...
you want me to read it again, Chair?
No, we've got it. I just wanted to make sure. And it's only dealing with the one witness?
At this point. I'll have two further motions as well.
Okay. The motion is on the floor. Does anybody want to speak to it? The motion's been moved. Mr. Abdullah and Mr. McKinnon.
Well, thank you. I think in the lack of clarity on the stakeholders at the very first motion, it's very, very important to agree on the importance of inviting agreeing on inviting some parties to be questioned and to be consulted with on this issue, and won't be anything wrong with it to agree as a group right now, as a committee, to on these few suggestions that Mr. McColman is suggesting, and then to be able to have some clarity on what we're going to be facing and who we're going to be seeing going forward.
Okay, I'll go to the list, but I think it should be understood with the previous motion that the steering committee will, whatever happens, these motions will add to them. Can't take away from them if these motions carry. Mr. McKinnon.
I think we can assure our honourable friends that the points of view, the opinions, the recommendations they will bring to the steering committee will be all taken into account and voted on if required. I know for our part there will be a number of interested parties, stakeholders, officials that we'll certainly want to consider having before the committee, and no doubt the opposition's suggestions will be taken into account at that point. So I don't know that we need to spend a lot more time trying to triage individual witnesses right at this point. We can certainly have the discussion at the subcommittee, but I think you can rest assured that between this examination and the eventual examination of the bill that will enable this important change, that we'll have an opportunity to exhaustively go through witnesses.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? And it's to invite the Canadian Federation of Independent Business on as a witness on this issue. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Opposed? Okay, motion lost. I do have a question for the committee before you start, and maybe this is to the clerk. The fact that this motion and inviting the CFIB on this issue, does that deny the subcommittee the right to invite them? Is the understanding it's no, we still could? Okay. All right, Mr. McCollum.
Motion that I have that I'd like to present, and that it reads that the Standing Committee on Finance invite the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board to appear before the committee to provide testimony and answer questions about their investment strategy and projections for future rates of return. And I'll pass this out, Mr. Chair.
This is for the. This is to invite the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board as a witness. Is there any discussion on that point? No discussion. Anything you want to add, Ms. Mover? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Lost. Next motion.
The third motion here is this: that the Standing Committee on Finance invite the Chief Actuary of Canada to appear before the committee to provide testimony and answer questions about how the June 20th, 2016 agreement with the provinces to expand the Canada Pension Plan will affect the fund's financial sustainability. And I have it in both official languages, Chair.
Any explanation behind that, Mr. McCollum?
No.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Lost. And does that end your motions?
Yes, it does, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and we are of the understanding that the subcommittee can still look at those as witnesses if they so decide.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Sabera.
No, we're good.
You're okay?
Yep.
All right, then that concludes the discussion on the Canada Pension Plan. Just to make a couple of points and see if we got agreement on the, and I think we're okay in public on this, on the pre-budget consultations. We have the witness lists from all the parties, and they are in pretty good order. We're short witnesses in some areas, in particular Newfoundland and Labrador and the territories. We have a considerable number from the Liberals, but we do. I'm asking both the NDP and the Conservatives if they could come forward with, if you think of anybody shortly. Yeah. Because for those hearings in Newfoundland and Labrador and the territories, we are. It will be by video conference, those hearings, but if you witnesses to get them in. We got two options on the panels. We could go with 6 witnesses. Where did that go on here? We could go with 2 1.5-hour panels of 6 witnesses, which gives us 12. Or we could go with 3 1-hour panels of 4 witnesses, which is also 12 per city. But what we've typically done on this committee is went with the 2 1.5-hour panels and a little break. Are people okay going that way? Various committees do it different ways. Okay in that?
Yeah.
So it'd be the same procedure as we followed in the past, and the other. Some of the committees, especially the Trade Committee, has been when they are in an area. Say it's Fredericton, New Brunswick, following the witnesses with the formal presentations, they have had what they call an open mic session, which allows people who didn't get the opportunity to present a brief or are in the audience and have something they want to say, to give them a minute. It's mostly a minute or 2, no questions. but to be able to at least put their information on the record and I guess give committee members the opportunity to think about it. I do think it's...
Guys, so don't get excited over there.
It does, and I think it gives the opportunity for the public that didn't have the press and the opportunity to present to have their say as well. So would people be okay with doing that at the end of the formal session, at least where we have time? Mr. Duval.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, this wouldn't take away any time from the
No.
actual witnesses? Okay,
No.
I'm fine with that.
Mr. McCollum.
Just a quick question. Would we set an outer time limit? Like if
Yes, we would have
100 people showed up?
Yeah.
We would be able to deal with it?
Yeah, we will have to decide how much time we want to allow.
Okay.
But we'd have to do that now, you're saying?
So we can book our flights after, so we know what time we can leave the cities.
Of course, it'll also depend how many witnesses we have in each area as well, because in some areas we have too many.
Toronto.
Well, Toronto for sure. But has anybody got any suggestion? What have the other big committees been doing? Half an hour, do they set aside?
International trade had a lot of interest.
So it varies between committees. Some have done 15 minutes, and trade has done up to 45 minutes to an hour. So do we want to set 45-minute maximum? Okay, agreed? Okay. I think that is it in terms of, has anybody got anything they want to suggest or ask on the pre-budget consultations? They are starting to come together well as people... yeah, with the open mic, we'll be putting out a news release this afternoon, which includes the possibility of open mic sessions. I would say that people need to keep in mind that on the we're back on the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st. We're hearing for 4 hours each day, 3:30 to 7:30. From the regional development agencies across the country, which includes the vice presidents of ACOA, WED, FedNor, etc. So that week, the first week back, 4 hours, 3 days hand running, is the regional development agencies to talk about the questions that we raised, which is how do you achieve growth to a certain extent. Mr. McCollum, and then we'll adjourn.
Just a question process on the open mic. Would it, ultimately when you put down time limits, there's the possibility of more people wanting to speak than we can allow because of the time limits. Will you have a process in place where you said you're going to make a public announcement about it, where people would actually register? It's kind of like first come, first to the mics, and so that it can be explained to people who may not get a chance that we did it on that basis, and we did a fair, we took the first ones who get, if they get 2 minutes each, the first 20 people kind of thing. And I'm just thinking to avoid the conflict, someone being rather put out that the fact that they didn't get a chance.
The way it's worked is it's first come, first served, and they have to register. So I would think our problem is why we've got to put a bit of a time frame on it is because we are in a city a day. We have to move to the next city that night. We're going to be up against plane schedules, and I would think if we've got the time, then we might be able to go over the hour. But we want to limit it to that point, at least for travel scheduling for the committee to move to the next stop. Because I can think, from where I sit at least, if we've got the time and there's more, then I'm willing to hear from them. But we don't want to box ourselves in that we can't catch our planes to the next stop. Okay, with that, have a good weekend, all. Thank you for your cooperation. Meeting adjourned.